right, lesson 1.4, measure and classify angles. So for this lesson, you should have written the vocab, which is angle, and an angle, we can sketch this out. An angle consists of two different rays with the same end point. You see how these are rays and they both end right here. So they have the exact same end point. And this is normally going to be labeled, so I'm just going to give each of these a label. The rays, or the sides, these are called the sides. And the point at which they meet is called the vertex. And so that's called the sides. All right, so let's practice this. You can label this several different ways. You can name this triangle, which you would write triangle, and then you could start at one endpoint, CBA, and put the vertex in the middle, CBA, or triangle, BAC. Oh, I wrote that wrong to begin with. Man, it's not CBA, it's CAB. Sorry. What I was going to say is the key is whichever the vertex is always has to be in the middle whenever you label this an angle. And this is an angle, not a triangle. It's late, I'm tired. So angle, angle. So angle CAB or angle BAC. Okay? So let's practice naming these. Look at example 1 in your textbook. Put this in your journal. I'm going to sketch it out for you real quick. All right, and this is labeled W, X, Y, Z. All right, so in the example it says name the three angles in the diagram. So we're going to label each of these angles. So the first one, you can say WXY, so angle WXY, or I could have said that backwards, YXW. Okay, the next angle, let's do the bottom one, YXZ. So angle YXZ, or do it backwards, angle ZXY. And then my last one is the big angle, WXZ. So angle WXZ, or do it backwards, ZXW. Angle ZXW. You'll notice with every single one of these, what is my middle letter? The vertex, which is X. Okay? All right, so now let's talk about using a protractor. And if you don't have one, I have some you can borrow. So there's a protractor, or you can grab an image off the internet like I did. When you use a protractor, you're using this to measure the angle, to measure how large or how skinny an angle is. And it's largely an approximate. It's not always perfect, but you can get a good idea. So look at Postulate 3, Protractor Postulate, and it has an angle on here. I'm going to draw it on my protractor. So it starts here. And it goes out that way. And I can't draw a perfectly straight line, so. All right, so when you are using your book, you can grab a protractor. The key is always line up this very bottom line here on one side of the angles. So you see on this one, it is along the side, so it's one side is on that bottom line, and then the other side goes up here and gives you a measurement. It's either going to be 140 or 40. Now, is this angle larger than 90 degrees or less than, or less than 90 degrees. Because remember, a 90-degree angle looks like this. So is that angle larger or less than? Well, this angle is definitely larger. So if you know it's larger than 90, then you know it's going to be the top number, not the bottom number. You see how the middle here is 90, 90? So when we're beyond the 90, you take the top number. So in this case, this measure of this angle is 140 degrees. Okay? Now, if I were to measure this other side, what if I had a line here? This one. Is that one less than or greater than 90? It's obviously less than, so I'm going to take the smaller number underneath, which means this is 40 degrees. And you'll notice that if I add these two together, I get my 180, which is the measurement of a straight line. Good. All right, so that was kind of a description of Postulate 3. Make sure you put the postulate out of your textbook, write it in your journals. I just kind of explained it, I didn't write it. Okay, so now let's classify angles. So there's four basic classifications. There's more than one way to classify an angle, but the four basics is acute, right, obtuse, and straight. The easiest one, of course, is the straight angle because it's just a straight line. So, an acute angle is when you have an angle that is less than the 90 degrees. So this one would be considered an acute angle. When I was in elementary school, my teacher was like, it's a cute, tiny little angle. And that's how I always remembered it. All right, right angles. That's when you have an angle that is exactly 90 degrees. They will give you the little box to determine that it's a 90-degree angle, the little red box. Okay, the obtuse, that's what we just did a minute ago. This is when it leans backwards, you can see, and it's greater than that 90 degrees. This would be your obtuse angle. I forgot to write this one. This is your right angle. And of course, the straight angle is when you are on a straight line. Good. Okay, so these are all different ways you can classify the angle. If I were to write the measurements, you would need to realize that an acute angle is anywhere between 0 degrees and less than 90 degrees. So the angle would be less than 90, greater than 0. It can't be 0 because that would be a straight line. Okay? The right angle, the measure of this angle is always 90 degrees. An obtuse angle, it has to be greater than 90. Can't be 90, it has to be greater than 90. And has to be less than 180. It can't be 180 because that would be what a straight line is. All right, now let's look at example 2. Put this in your journal. Use the diagram to find the measure of the indicated angle, then classify each angle. Let me take a picture. All right, this is on page 25 in your book if you want to follow it there. All right, so we're going to look at this protractor and find the measure of the angle and then classify it. When you hear the words classify, that's when you're doing the acute, obtuse, etc. So for A, it says to find the measure of KHJ. So over here, I need to find KHJ. I found it right there. KHJ. Well, first of all, where does it cross up here? Is it smaller than 90? Yes. So that means you're going to use the smaller number on the bottom. So it's halfway between 50 and 60. So the measure of this angle would be 55 degrees. Okay? And then it says to classify it. So what kind of angle is that? It is less than 90, so it's an acute angle. All right, let's look at B. B, we're finding the measure of GHK. Measure of GHK. So let's find GHK on here. Here's GHK. So there it is. So is this less than 90 or more than 90? It's more than 90, so we're going to use the outside one. So that's halfway between 120 and 130. So the measure of GHK is 125 degrees. What kind of angle is that? Well, it's greater than 90, so this would be an obtuse angle. Okay, for C, the measure angle GHJ equals GHJ. So here's GHJ, right here on the bottom. So, is that what kind of angle? That would be a straight angle, which is always how many degrees? 180 degrees. It's a flat line. Straight. And our last one is measure of angle, GHL. So GHL, that goes straight up. So this one equals what? It's straight up. You can see on the protractor it runs over 90. So this is what kind of angle? Good, a right angle. All right, so that's how you use a protractor. All right, let's look at Postulate 4. All right, make sure you put this in your journals. Postulate 4. This is the angle addition postulate. And it tells you that if P is the interior of RST, then the measurement of RST is equal to the sum of RSP and PST. So essentially they're telling you if you have an angle that's bisecting this, the two angles added together add up to the outer angle. Surely that makes a little sense, common sense to you guys. This one plus this one adds up to be the big one. Okay, so let's practice this. Example 3. All right, so here's our angles. And it tells you, given that the measure of angle LKN equals 145 degrees. Find out the measure of LKM and the measure of MKN. So they gave you LKN. Well, LKN is which part? That's the outer one, right? So that's this total measurement equals 145. But we know that this one plus this one equals the total. So I could set them equal, or I could set them to add and then find out the value for x. So I can say 2x plus 10 plus 4x minus 3. And all of that added up should equal my total, which is 145. So now we just simplify like terms. So I can kind of get rid of these parentheses because it's a plus sign in the middle, nothing complicated about that. And I can combine like terms. I have a 2x and a 4x, add those together, I get 6x. Then I have a positive 10 and a negative 3. Plus 10 minus 3 is going to give you a positive 7. So then I just rewrite the end here. So now to get x by itself, this is plus 7, so I'm going to subtract 7. I'm left with 6x on that side. 145 minus 7. 138. And then I divide by 6. Divide by 6. That's gone. I'm left with x equals, what's 138 divided by 6? 23. So now we know that x equals 23. Well, what am I trying to solve here? I'm trying to solve LKM, which is this first equation, and then MKN, which is the second equation. So now I just plug in my x wherever the x is here. So let me try and squeeze this in. I'm going to use a different color. The measure of LKM equals 2 times my x, which is 23, plus 10. Well, 23 times 2 is 46 plus 10. So my answer here is 56 degrees. Now let's do the second one. Measure of MKN. It's the second equation. 4 times the x, which is 23, minus 3, equals. So 4 times 23 would be 92, minus 3 is going to give you 89 degrees. So this one is 56 degrees, this one is 89 degrees. So I have found the two answers that it was looking for. All right, good. All right, just some quick rules, how they draw things. Let me grab my black pen. If I have an angle, and then I have another angle, and they do the little red tick mark like they do when they're telling you a line is the same. In this case, it's telling you the angle is the same. So this means that they are congruent, and congruent is a fancy word for equal. That means they're equal to each other. If this is labeled angle A and angle B, you would say angle A is congruent to angle B. Congruent is just an equal sign with the fancy squiggly on top. Okay? That is it. That is your lesson. Well, let's do a little bit. I have another exam I should go through. I want to do the guided practice number 5. So we're on page 27, guided practice number 5. All right, so we have this shape, and it wants you to identify all pairs of congruent angles. So here you got to look at the tick marks. So what's a set of congruent angles? Well, both of these have one tick mark. So I would say angle T is congruent to angle S. Okay, what about this one? We have another that has 2 tick marks. So that means those are equal to each other. I'd say angle P is congruent to angle R. Would this one be congruent to this one? No, because this has 1 tick mark where this has 2. Okay? Just wanted to clarify that. All right, let's do the last example on page 28, example 5. Because we need to talk about an angle bisector. An angle bisector, you heard me say it earlier, is an angle that directly splits this angle in half. Okay, so if this is angle Y, and then this is X, and this is W, and this is Z. And we know that YW, segment YW, bisects. What that tells you is that this angle is the same as this angle because it cuts it directly in the middle. Okay? So when you hear that word bisect, it means it cuts it directly in the middle. So for instance, if they were to tell me, in example 3, they tell you that the measure of angle XYW is 18 degrees. Well, XYW is this little angle right here. So we know that in here it's 18 degrees. So what does that mean this other side is, the WYZ? Well, it's the same mark, so we know that it's also 18. So then if they ask you what the measure of XYZ is, well, that would be the outer one, XYZ. All you have to do is add these two angles. So we're going to say 18 plus 18, which would be 36. So the measure of angle XYZ is 36. Okay, so again, this is angle bisector. It tells you YW is the angle bisector. Just means it cuts it in half, and those two angles are going to be exactly the same. All right, good. So that is your lesson. Sorry, I tried to quit early. You're doing numbers 3 through 41, just the odds. And that's it. Let me know if you have any questions.